Imagine expanding your team's abilities without adding headcount. With Element 451, AI assistants like admissions advisors and student success coaches work alongside your staff to deliver personalized experiences at scale, offer round the clock support, and uncover data driven insights. It's not just about doing more, it's about doing it smarter. Elevate your team with an AI workforce that delivers personalized, scalable, and impactful experiences across the student lifecycle. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where each week we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another super special live episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. We are here at South by Southwest EDU in Austin, Texas. This is the second of our slate of interviews that we're doing all week here at the conference. Very grateful for the opportunity to chat with a variety of folks that are here, just to kind of bring the novelty of in-person conversations, but also, like, for me, what I love about this event is that intersection of so many different people. But our conversation today is with Annie from Turnitin. They have some big news that we'll be kind of digging in with, but why don't you start out as we always do, just kind of brief introduction of yourself, your role at Turnitin, and just kind of broadly what Turnitin does, and then we'll focus more specifically on the big news that you all have.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Annie Chechitelli. I am the Chief Product Officer at Turnitin. I've been at Turnitin for about 3.5 years. Turnitin is the global leader in academic integrity solutions. It's been around for 25 years. It started when the internet came about and teachers were worried about academic integrity in a way of more of the traditional copy-paste plagiarism from a website. So you think about kind of how far we've come with the web in those 25 years of worried that students weren't going to write and they were just going to copy the internet. And now we're in a world with different types of technology and trying to figure out how to use that as best as we can to get students ready for the workforce, but also make sure they're developing the key critical thinking skills that we need our community and our students to have.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you because, Turnitin, I feel like, is synonymous with this sort of area, academic integrity, and certainly how it's been evolving, over kind of your all's tenure and everything. But before we get too far, just, we're here at South by Southwest EDU. Again, super cool, unique event that I love. You've been here for a couple of days. Any immediate reflections, things that you're sensing, feeling, good session that maybe you went to, any sort of thoughts that you'd want to share, I guess. Just we're talking, on Wednesday. So we're in the thick of it. So any immediate reflections so far?
From a data perspective, I find it interesting. It's a great event because from, at least in my session, it was about half higher ed and half K-12, which to me is one of the few shows that combines different levels of education. They're obviously very different segments, but it's interesting to hear how they're not always so uncommon and also how we tie those two things together. So for me, that's one of my favorite parts of this conference because it really is unique. I also think that the dedication of everyone who comes to this conference and the passion they have for the work that they do is really, that to me always stands out as well, especially this year, around just really trying to figure out how to move forward with all the different changes in society as well as technologically, which is unique to this show.
Yeah, because there's obviously certain things that overlap, some things that are totally distinct, and certainly, just the nature of the work, overlaps, but then certain tools, and it's interesting to see sort of those intersections of products or platforms and people and organizations, and Yeah, I mean, that's, again, just to really reiterate, and, that is, again, that intersection of all those folks is, I think, what makes this event really unique. So today, as we're recording, big news coming out of Turnitin as of yesterday. So if you want to tell us more about the exciting new announcement as of yesterday of Turnitin Clarity.
Yeah, I'll start by kind of telling the story of Turnitin Clarity, and that'll really help underline the value of the tool and what we hope it brings to the education community of practice. So 2 years ago, we came out, it was 4 months after ChatGPT. We were just hearing from our customers, primarily on the front lines. I think that the needs of administrators and the needs of educators when it comes to how you handle AI have been very different. And we heard early on from the teachers that they just needed some help. They needed to figure out how are they going to be able to have transparency to understand if the student did the writing as well as if they're using tools appropriately. And so we launched our AI detector 2 years ago, really just to kind of as a first step of like, here's the first step with AI. There's going to be a lot more steps, but like first let's cut down on the fear. And then we can start tackling what we do with it. Once everyone's kind of more relaxed and we can start thinking about big picture, how do we change? What do we change in our teaching practices? And so we did that 2 years ago. And then we heard very quickly back from both K-12 and higher ed, I would say more so higher ed, that just looking for more data points around, okay, well, this makes sense, but what are other data points I can look at to ensure the authenticity of writing? And so that was the first thing we heard. In K-12, the classes are smaller, so we found that teachers had a better sense of if something was along the lines of their students, or they scaffold their assignment, so they had turned in a first draft. And so they just had more data points to begin with as opposed to higher education. And so then, we get past that first chapter and we hear a lot, and it's good, of saying, hey, we need to embrace this. It's not going anywhere. Students need to understand what it means to use it responsibly, and teachers have to think about how to adapt their curriculum and their teaching to use it in the best possible ways. And no one disagrees with that. I think that the rubber meets the road with like, okay, well, how? Right, so you have all the administrators and everyone else saying like, oh, we have to figure this out and we're going to adopt it. And the educators really feel left behind in what we've learned. They feel left behind. They don't have the support to understand what it means, what a responsible use of AI means. And this time last year, I was really disappointed because I'm waiting for research. What I mean by the research is like, I'm looking for someone to put out a framework about, like, I think about the x-axis is all the different reasons we write. We write to communicate. We write to persuade. We write to reflect. We write to generate knowledge. All the reasons we write, they're all very different. And then on the y-axis is kind of the building blocks of what makes up that writing. And then you look at a grid and you say, okay, well, this box we can outsource to AI. It's fine. And for this thing, we can outsource to AI. But this has to remain. We have to make sure we're developing these skills within writing and really break down what writing does for us as a society. It's so different, right? And it's used in a variety of ways. And so this past year, I really felt that we were at a standstill, kind of in this pause of like waiting for something next and seeing more and more, I would say, academic integrity escalations happen. And also seeing more on social media about ways to subvert different systems. I've even seen lots of new companies with business models of how to subvert any type of integrity detection. It's always shocking to me that there's this whole economy of how to fool Turnitin. But we've seen a lot of that. And so we took the step back and said, okay, well, two things. How do we solve for the academic integrity problem kind of at its core? And number two, how do we help educators learn how to embrace AI and give students confidence in how they're using it, that they're using it appropriately? And that's where Turnitin Clarity came from. So Turnitin Clarity is a student composition space that the teacher has access to after the student submits and can see the work and how it came together, as well as if the teacher allows for AI to be used in the assignment, how the student used AI, the different prompts they use, and how they evolved their material throughout. So kind of this combination of integrity and a formative tool.
Yeah, I appreciate kind of the whole like origin story of this and everything, because I think that is, I'm sure, resonating with many of our listeners of that journey that kind of you were on, or, your team was on, and everything, is that, we're still in very early days. So we don't have maybe, these really just clear, explicit, best practices or research and those sort of things. So, even just at least, I guess, kind of, sort of following your nose, I guess, of just sort of like sniffing out, just sort of like, oh my God, there's, these things over here that are like trying to like get around, these academic integrity things, and people are just sort of like existing in a wild west with like these tools. So like, how can we try to, in my mind, I guess, like get the best of both worlds, where it's like, we're not just completely banning AI. We're not just sort of letting folks, use it to whatever extent they choose. And we don't know, what extent that is. And, trying to bring just some intentionality around, how AI can be very supplementary. I think that has certainly been, a common sort of anecdote from a lot of people. It's like, oh yeah, that helps me like get an outline started, or sort of like, for me, like I've been saying a lot of like, podcast episode titles, because like I've been doing this for a very long time. I can't come up with another clever, whippy, engaging title and stuff. So like, yeah, it's like those simple things where I'm still also putting my fingerprints on it. Like it'll give me a bunch of options, and I'm like, well, I want part of this one and part of this one, and then I'm going to like add a couple more pieces in there.
But now imagine an AI that was built for podcasters, that had prompts that it knows podcasters would want. And that's really what we're doing for education. So we have, it's going to evolve, but we do have an open prompt, because we realize, there's a lot we don't know, and we're letting that open prompt kind of teach us, as well as some of the canned prompts, such as giving feedback to the student of how would this compare, or how does this relate to the rubric that my teacher assigned, or how are all my citations matching up? How have I done the citations properly? And so adding some of those canned prompts that are specific to education, and also make teachers and instructors in higher ed feel more comfortable that there are some guardrails there. And then over time, our intention is to, perhaps let teachers have more, instructors have more leeway, so that you can say, hey, I want light AI, I want medium AI, I can have totally open AI. I mean, that's really, I think, what we're going to be seeing going forward in terms of at the assignment level. What do they want to do with it? Yeah.
I mean, I think that level kind of customization, flexibility, can get really granular and sort of surgical with like, this, assignment. Yeah. This one, not so much, or whatever. I don't want the AI to sort of, because this is supposed to be a very, like you're saying, kind of the whole spectrum of like why we write and everything, is like, this should very much be an authentic, genuine, personal reflection on a concept or experience or something that you're having as a student. So I think something like this feels like a very powerful tool and step in the right direction to help students build just sort of like AI literacy. Like, I think that is just going to be a thing that they, we've talked a lot over the past several years about like just sort of like digital literacy of just, how do you exist online and social media and, whatever else. So I'm curious if you can expand on that. It's just sort of like kind of the segue to like what makes this tool so important for students in particular.
Yeah. And that's kind of the newest chapter in this journey. I like that better than my word saga, so I'm going to take that from you. Saga sounds a little bit too emotional. The journey from really understanding AI within education, and this third wave is really students. And this past year, we heard a lot from students on both sides. We heard students say, I want to use it, but I don't know how much. I'm unsure, and I feel I'm not secure, and I have anxiety, and don't want to be accused of overusing it and have to handle that. But at the same time, if I don't use it, I'm falling behind. We've also heard students very much upset about the level playing field of like, hey, I'm doing everything right. I'm following all the rules, and my dodo roommate over here is using it for all their assignments and just floating on B minuses, and that's not fair. And I feel like that demotivates me to continue to try to do better and develop. And so all of those actually really cause us to think about turning clarity very much for the students. So solving multiple problems. Number one, they can use AI without anxiety. And they know that they're in an environment. And if they overuse it, the teacher will tell them, but at least they did it in a way that wasn't secretive. It was out in the open, and it was transparent. And that's where you solve and you grow, is, we're all going to kind of figure out those guardrails, but at least they feel like they're doing it in a way that's supported, and they don't have that anxiety. They also can feel comforted that their work is being judged appropriately against other work, that they do have fair access and fair play in terms of those types of educational goals. So with that, we worked a lot with students on the tool, and we learned a lot. I mean, I give the example of like a feature that we never thought or we didn't really comprehend until we started doing more user research. And we were working with students around explaining to them, well, the teacher's going to be able to see how this all came together. And they're going to be able to kind of like a video, rewind and fast forward different parts of the writing process for you and getting their feedback and sentiment on that. And the students were like, that's fine. I'm actually okay with that, but I don't want the teacher to see it before it's done, which was surprising to us. But I guess it makes sense. They had this anxiety that if the teacher saw it very early on, that might bias the outcome of their final grade later on. And so that was a feature we were just going to let the teacher have access at any time. But now, the way that it is in the planning is there's no peeking. I think that's a kind of the quote around the teacher can't see it until the student submits it. And that makes the student feel more secure and confident in their submission. But it's little things like that we're learning as we're talking to students using the tool.
Want to know what AI-powered people focus really looks like? The 2025 Engage Summit will show you how AI transforms engagement without losing the human touch. Join us June 24th through 25th in Charlotte for actionable insights, hands-on demos, and transformative strategies. Enrollify listeners save $50 with code Enrollify50. Sign up now at engage.element451.com. The point that kind of resonates with me too is that idea of, sort of showing your work kind of thing. It's like, all right, here's my finished product. And I'm sure, again, like just the sort of like, depending on the assignment and, preference or whatever of like the faculty member, they can sort of like, mixing my metaphors here, but like, look under the hood and sort of be like, how'd you get here? Like, what prompts did you use? And be like, oh, I can see why you kind of like diverted a little bit. And maybe it like took you longer than you thought. Like if they're trying to provide really constructive feedback or anything else, like at least just like, look at sort of the path they took, give some feedback, put the grade in and kind of move on. But then also it could be, I think, really helpful kind of fodder for even like deeper conversations, again, just under the guise of sort of building AI literacy, giving those sort of tools like good prompts and different things. And again, still having like the right level, certainly at this juncture, of like scrutiny of what like AI tools are giving you and stuff. Cause it's just like, don't think that these are all infallible and perfect all the time. It's, again, it should be like, helping inspire your writing or guide it or, maybe give you some feedback, but it's like, you're still in the driver's seat. You're still doing it. It's your assignment. Your name's going to be on it. You're getting the grade. So like, feel as though you're confident that, what you're producing and submitting is aligned with the rubric, is factual information, whatever else. But like it really can be, I know, just like for any creator, myself included, that sort of like being tormented by the blank page kind of thing. It's just like sometimes you just need to get something to get started, and whatever that is in the production of some sort of submission for an assignment. I think it's just going to be really helpful, and then even just sort of long term and whatever sort of path the student takes after graduation, they've helped to kind of have hopefully some opportunities for building AI literacy skills and everything. So it's really, really exciting. Yeah, it's cool to see. But so as a final thought to the conversation, certainly if you want to kind of dig a little bit deeper in what we've been talking about here, like building AI literacy skills and sort of experiences in the classroom, but just like what else are you excited about when it comes to AI in higher education?
I'm excited to see how it helps students, like you said, get started and also get guidance in addition to getting guidance from their teacher, not in replacement to, right? Clarity is really a tool that at the core is bringing teachers and students together, because we think that relationship is the most important one. And, we want to make integrity a non-issue, right? So they can actually spend the time working together on giving feedback to make them better thinkers and better writers without spending their time on making sure the student did the work. And we talk to teachers and they feel that they're willing to spend a lot more time if that is just not a non-issue. They can then feel that investing in that student is worthwhile. And so, what I'd like to see is just kind of turning down a little bit of the academic integrity issues that have happened or that kind of take a lot of airtime that it doesn't need to, right? And we can focus on making students better writers and thinkers in the future. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about some of these tools once we get used to them. I can't wait to see the prompts that students have. When you think about it, we have all these B2C, consumer tools with OpenAI or Gemini, or you pick your tool, and we really don't have a lot of insight into how students are using them. We kind of think we might, but we don't have the data. But to really look at the data of how students are using it and what are the most productive cases is going to be fascinating. So I'm just really excited around the data, and then building, some templates. You think about okay, well, this is a standard template for freshman year writing in college. This is a standard template for humanities philosophy, and here are the types of prompts you would have. You think about how you can actually make that customized over time. So that's really exciting to me, as well as in general. We are also on the other side always trying to make the process of grading and feedback easier for educators. That's a kind of a hot topic now, and it's interesting. We're following it closely around what is that going to mean? Don't want to ever outsource that relationship between the teacher and students, but how can you make things easier for teachers to dive into the more meaningful parts of that relationship, perhaps? And so we provide also within our platform some grading and feedback tools. And so one of the features that we're launching later this year in our just traditional grading and feedback tools is the concept of summarization. So that's like an easy one. So when you think about a teacher, they complain about grading and having to summarize all of the marks they put on a paper. So page 1, they put a whole bunch of things, page 2, a whole bunch of things. And then at the end, you think I'm going to summarize this. Well, AI can just summarize what you've already done. Hey, and it's your work. It's not like it's grabbing a different work. It's your work that it's summarizing for the student. So that's an example of kind of a small win of how do you use AI in a way that's still very authentic to the instructor, but at the same time saving them time and making the feedback more impactful for the student.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Because that's something where it's AI is really good at recognizing patterns. So if it's just sort of okay, yeah, I had the same note where it's just formatting or whatever, and it just sort of being do I have to leaf back through and do what, so yeah, I think it's those sort of things, because it's even the marginal gains of efficiency and effectiveness. It's but yeah, it's, they're grading, dozens of papers every, semester and everything else. And, all their colleagues are doing that too. So I do think it's those sort of benefits cannot be overlooked. And they are sort of the, small things with big impacts, or maybe sort of subtle and not maybe the most kind of flashy thing. But glad you all are embracing it and uplifting, AI in higher education for these uses in the classroom. And just appreciate you taking some time out of South by EDU to come hang out and talk all about it.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Podcast Network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451. A leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.